Beatrice and the Rough Roller, written and told by Kiefer Adams. Summer had once again come to the island of Sodor, and there were more holidaymakers than ever. The Fat Controller's engines worked hard to make sure they were all taken to their seaside destinations. With the summer season came the annual fete. The engines loved this time of year, but Trevor the traction engine loved it most of all. The roads were more busier than before too, and the Fat Controller knew exactly who to turn to keep the holiday spirits at an all-time high. One morning, Thomas had just dropped off the mail to Hackenbeck. He was just informing Bertie about the summer fete when a familiar whistle sounded, but it wasn't that of an engine. Gliding into view was none other than Beatrice the Road Train. She had been on Sodor before, and Thomas was delighted to see her again. "Hello, Beatrice," cried Thomas. "You look so much better." "I am, thank you," Beatrice beamed. "That new radiator I had last summer has done me wonders." "It's a pleasure to see you again, Beatrice," beamed Bertie. "Watch out for George, though." "Don't worry," Beatrice chuckled. "I've dealt with loads of steamrollers on the mainland." Beatrice collected her passengers in her 3 special coaches and rumbled down the road. Thomas smiled. He was more than happy to have seen Beatrice again. Beatrice drove towards the town of Norrumby, where she would pick up more passengers before going off to the next seaside town. As she trundled along the road, she heard a puffing sound behind her. Then an impatient whistle shortly followed. "Get out of the way!" roared a voice. Beatrice was taken by surprise. "Oh!" she cried. Beatrice swerved slightly, her coaches rattling behind her, as George the Steamroller clattered past. "You silly old thing," he growled. "Steam engines don't belong on the roads." "I'm a road train, I'll have you know," Beatrice cried back. "Road train, my roller," growled George. "Keep your little wheels off my roads, or there'll be trouble." And George rumbled down the road, leaving Beatrice rather shaken up. She felt even worse when they reached the next town. As Beatrice waited for more passengers to board her train, she was miserable. "Silly old roller," she grumbled. "He knows how to keep you down."
"Would that be George by any chance, dearie?"
said a voice. Beatrice looked up. There was Caroline, the vintage car who belonged to the Elsbridge cricket team. "Why, yes," said Beatrice. "How do you know?"
"George is a terror to these roads,"
sighed Caroline.
"You don't need to worry about him. Karma always gets him in the end."
"He's so unpleasant," said Beatrice. "I wish he would be in the summer season."
"Some vehicles have their ways,"
said Caroline modestly.
"You just have to let George get on with his."
Caroline then rolled away. Beatrice smiled. She felt a little better, as it was time to leave for the next seaside town. As Beatrice continued on her travels, she was very surprised. George was up ahead with steam and smoke billowing in all directions. His driver was trying everything he could to stop it. Beatrice chuckled and remembered what Caroline had said. She and her 3 coaches glided past as George wailed for his driver to stop his pain. The holidaymakers on board Beatrice's coaches pointed and laughed. "Stop it!" shouted George. "Who do you think you are?" "Well, I think I'm a road train who's doing something useful, unlike you," Beatrice cackled, and she drove off down the road. Just when George thought that things couldn't get any worse, Henry passed by with a long train of troublesome trucks. They thought the situation was funny too.
"Look, there's Roly George, Roly George, Roly George. Look, there's Roly George. Oh, he's stuck."
and the trucks giggled in their silly way. Growled George as the train glided away. Beatrice had dropped her passengers to their respectful towns and was resting in the yards of Farquhar. Thomas and Percy had heard everything. "Well done, Beatrice," congratulated Percy. "No one's ever been courageous to take on George before." "As I told Thomas this morning," said Beatrice, "I've dealt with a lot of steamrollers on the mainland. George doesn't even compare." "I think it'll be a long time before George starts teasing you again," said Thomas. "We can only hope, Chuck," smiled Beatrice. Just then, more passengers arrived to board her for the seaside trips. "Gotta go," Beatrice called. "See you all later." Beatrice tooted her special whistle and glided away down the road. "Can you imagine it?" smiled Percy to Thomas. "She actually dealt with the so-called roughest roller on Sodor." Thomas chuckled and wholeheartedly agreed.